Hi everyone, welcome to this tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be talking about HTML ID and class attributes. Before we move on, I would like you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our videos, share to friends and family, and also follow us on our social media platforms like Facebook page, join our Facebook group, like our Facebook page, join our Telegram channel, follow us on Instagram, VSKIT, LinkedIn, and also don't forget to visit our website b.ly/Vicsad Academy. So before we move on, I want you to know that HTML ID and class attributes are very useful as an essential attribute and also global attribute. So let's talk about the HTML ID attribute. When we talk of the ID attribute is a global attribute. That is the first thing to know about the ID attribute. It is a global attribute and it stands for identifier. So when we talk about the HTML ID attribute, we are talking about the HTML identifier attribute, which is a global attribute. So what is a good? Let's have a good definition of the HTML ID attribute. The HTML ID attribute can be defined as an identifier and a global attribute that is required to be unique throughout the whole document. The HTML ID attribute can be defined as a global and an identifier attribute that is required to be unique throughout the whole document. So the main points are the ID attribute stands for identifier attribute, is a global attribute, and is required to be unique throughout the whole document. When we talk of global attribute, it means it can work on all HTML elements. When we talk about unique throughout the document, means that the ID attribute with the same value must not appear again on that same document or HTML file. So let's go there. Okay, so we have to open our code editor. This is our web browser and this is what we did in the last tutorial. So I'm going to open my code editor and I'm not really sure if I've cleared off the last code, but I've not refreshed the page. But let's check that. Like I've said earlier, I said I'm not sure if I've cleared off the code or I haven't. So I've cleared it off for real. So I just have to clear this mini one off. So guys, I'm gonna insert back the heading 2 elements and I'm going to write a few text and then we are going to be applying the HTML ID attribute on them. So let's go there. So after that, I'm going to create a paragraph tag and I'm going to write a lot of text into the paragraph tag. So I'm going to create the paragraph tag right now and then I'm going to pause the video. So I'm going to pause the video so as to make the video as short as possible. So guys, I paused the video and then applied some text. I input some text in the index.html file document. So right now, I'm going to make use of the ID attribute. So first of all, let's control and refresh the page. So right now you are seeing text there. So I'm going to apply the ID attribute and you are going to see that the ID attribute is not performing anything at all. So let's go there. So before we give these two tags the element ID attributes, remember that the ID attribute must be unique throughout your documents, meaning these two these two elements must not have the same value of the ID attributes. So I'm going to give a deep and practical explanation as I'm coding it on this laptop. Oh guys, sorry. So guys, what I'm trying to prove to you, or what I'm trying to say about the unique throughout your document is the h2 element has an ID attribute of header. So if the ID attribute of that h2 element is header, this of the paragraph must not have header like this. So we can't have something like this. It is wrong. We can have another thing else like maybe head or maybe head and r, but we can't have er to it. So I'm just gonna give this po1. I'm gonna give that h2 element the value of header to the ID attribute. So the ID attribute value must never be the same throughout your document. If at all it wants to be the same, then it has to be another document. So I can enter this place right now and then create p tag and also give it an id of po1, it is correct. But on this same page or on this same document or on this same html file, there is no other element throughout it that can carry this id attribute with the value of po1. It is wrong. Even though it's my work, it is very wrong. So right now, let's take a very good example of how this id attributes work, because we said that it helps in styling, scripting, and also linking. So that is the essential goals for styling, scripting, and for linking. So right now I'm gonna open our css file. So guys, I'll have to pause the video to just know, or I think, don't let me pause it, let me just drag it into our code editor. Yeah, so right now I'm just gonna clear up the code. So now we told you that the essential goal is for it to script, style, and link. So I'm gonna forget about the aspect of linking, because a lot of us know how to link, and the id attribute is very important when linking, especially in table of content. But I'm not gonna be doing that in this tutorial. It is essential in scripting, that's Java scripting, which will be using the dot get elements by id. I'm not gonna be doing that. I'm only going to be using it in aspect of css, because I believe in our futures tutorial like that of javascript and that of css, so I'm still going to make a better explanation of the id attributes. So right now I want to call this element, but I'm not going to call it through the h1 in which we did in the html css tutorial, but I'm going to be calling it through the id attributes. And for me to call it through the id attributes, I need this hash. So I'm going to write in my hash right now, and then I'm going to put the name or the value given to the id attribute here. So I'm going to copy this, Ctrl C, then I'll come back here and give it v, and then I'm going to save it. So right now we are going to do the normal CSS we do to even the normal elements by using the opening and the closing curly braces. So that's how we're going to do it right now, and then we're going to give it the normal styling we used to give it, like let's give it the color. So I think we should give it a blue, and then we're going to give it the background color of dark blue. So we're gonna come back here to refresh the page. I can see that it's not working, then something's wrong with our code. So make use of this hash, then came back here to come and copy this. Okay, so why is our code not working? So I just need to pause the video. So guys, our CSS is not working and it's a little bit confusing. Even a lot of you are beginners and wondering why is it not working. Are we not supposed to be prepared? Am I not supposed to be prepared for this tutorial? Yeah, I'm prepared, but because we really want this bug to happen, and I believe it is God's way. So guys, our web browser is not working, so we just have to refresh the page and it's not working, and then we begin to wonder what happened. The value of the id attribute is the same with the property which we called here, and because it's an id attribute, it's not directly an element, you have to make use of the hashtag. But the problem is because we've not linked into the css, so we just have to link it through the css right now. I'm gonna give it thread. Hope you know how to link to the css. If you don't, then I think you have to go back to the HTML CSS tutorial, which I talked about it, and then our href is equals to css.css. Then we have to close this up. Then I have to give this text /css. Okay, we just have to so Control S, and then I'm gonna come back to refresh the page. A lot of you will be wondering, wow, this is great. So I'm gonna come back here to change the color to white smoke, if possible, if there's a color like that, and I'm sure there is. Yeah, so guys, I just did the same styling we are doing in the HTML CSS, which we did in the HTML CSS tutorial, but using the ID or identifier attribute, which is a global attribute. So right now I'm just going to call the next attribute, which is PO1, by me using the hash, and then using my two opening and closing curly braces, I'm going to give it the color of cyan, and then I'm going to give it the background color of dark cyan. Then I'll go back to refresh, and then you can see that. So right now I'm just going to give this a white smoke too. So guys, you can see a very simple styling we did, even though it's a little bit not beautiful. Let's just leave that, because that's not the main purpose of this tutorial. The main purpose of this tutorial is for us to understand the ID attribute, also known as the identifier attribute, which we use to style these things. So you can see that the ID attribute main purpose is for scripting, styling, and for linking, and we've started, and I told you that in some futures tutorial we're going to be using it for scripting and some other things. So guys, that is the work of the ID attribute. And remember, an ID attribute with the same value must not appear on the same page again, except with that of another page can have it. So I can also have Control C, Control V, and then I can also have header. This is to say that even an ID attribute can be used with the same value on different elements and on different web page, but it cannot be used on the same web page or on the same element or different elements on the same web page. When we talk of the class attributes, which is the next one we talk about, it is a very interesting attribute that a lot of developers use. So let me define the class attribute for you. The class attribute is a global attribute. That is one features of the class attribute. It is used to allow JavaScript and CSS to be able to select more or one HTML element in a web page. The class attribute can be defined as a type of attribute that allows HTML elements to have class. The definition of the HTML class attributes can be the definition is just, how can I put it? It's just the same as the name, because it can be defined as an attribute that allow every HTML element to have a class. So with the definition, we can know that the class attribute is just for us to set a class to every element on the HTML document. And remember that the class attribute is a global attribute, and it gives access for the JavaScript and the CSS to be able to have access to one or more HTML elements on the web page. So let's make use of the class attribute. So I'm going to create the same thing of this, Control C, and then I'm going to give this so I'm going to Control S and then refresh the page, and then we're going to have the same thing like that. Now, one thing to know about the class attribute is that you can have the same element or different element on the same web page or on different web page having the same class attribute with the same value. So what am I trying to say? I can also give this an attribute of header. So I've given it an attribute of header by me just leaving a space. It's carrying two the class attribute right now is carrying two values. It's carrying the value of PO1 and the value of header, and I can also clear up the value of the PO1. It will still work. It is correct this way, because the class attributes can work on one or more elements in a web page or on different web pages. So meaning you can make use of the class attributes with the same value on the same elements that are many, or different elements that are many on the same web page or on different web page. So I can also copy this, Ctrl C, and then I'm gonna come back here to give it Ctrl V. So let's just leave a space, and I'm gonna come back here to copy it again, Ctrl C, then come back here and give it Ctrl V. So right now the class attribute is working perfectly because it allows itself to be shared. The class attribute with the value can be shared to different elements on the page, or the same element on the page, or different web page, and it will still work. So right now I'm just going to go to my CSS and call those class, and then I'm going to give them something very interesting. So let's just go there. So guys, for you to call the class attributes, you have to make use of the period. For us to call the value of an HTML ID attribute, you have to make use of the hash. But for us to call the HTML class, the value of the HTML class attribute, you have to make use of the period, and then we can style in as much as possible that I want to style in. So I'm going to give it a text align. I'm going to give it center. So you can see that everything is in the center, but the reason why you can't know that everything is in this center is as a result of this is too long for the web page to do. So I think we should just make use of the break tag. Yeah, you can see that even this came to the center. So a little bit wondering why this did not go to the center. So let's just make use of the break tag. You can see this is in the center, and you can see this that was not in the center. We're a little bit confused that why it was not in the center. It's right now in the center. This was the first to go to the center. This right now in the center. This right now in the center. Wow, the class attribute is performing its work through the help of the CSS, and remember that can also work for that of JavaScript. So right now the similarities between the HTML ID and the class attribute is that both works for scripting, which is JavaScript, both work for styling, which is CSS, and the differences is that the ID attributes can only be used on one element on the web page, while the class attribute can be used on different elements or the same element on a web page. So guys, I hope you love this tutorial, and I hope you will subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our videos, share to friends and family. Don't forget to comment in the section below, and don't forget to comment the attribute you like most in between of the class attribute or the ID attribute. Just comment it, and but be aware that even though you provide the class attribute or you provide the identity attribute, know that both of them are very important, because there are a lot of differences between them. The major differences between them is that one can be used only once on the web page, while one can be used as many times as possible with the same value on your web page. So guys, I would love to tell you that yes, Jesus loves you, and you would like to give your life to Christ, but at the same time, don't forget Vicsad Academy on all social media platforms. Thank you very much. Love you all. I still remain that guy from Vicsad Academy. Bye.